Hello, and welcome to this Foster Care Institute online training webinar. Caseworkers and foster parents working together. This is the foster parent version, and I am your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, the founder and director of the Foster Care Institute, an author, a speaker, a trainer, and a parent myself. Now, I've had over 60 children come through my home over the course of 16 years as a foster parent, and I have worked with some wonderful, wonderful caseworkers. Indeed, some caseworkers are my good friends, and I very much value what they do. Our goal during this webinar is to help caseworkers and foster parents work together for the benefit of the child. Participants will increase their awareness of some of the views and opinions of today's foster parents and caseworkers, and participants will gain an understanding of how to develop and implement strategies to design to aid foster parents when working with caseworkers. Recently, the Foster Care Institute conducted a survey of over 5,000 foster parents across the nation. We wanted to find out one thing. Why are today's foster parents quitting? Why, only after roughly a year and a half in service as a foster family, as foster parents, why do they close up their home? Why are there so many foster parents who are not foster parents 5 years later? What was the problem in regards to foster parent retention? This is what we wanted to find out in this very intensive survey and study. This study, conducted by the Foster Care Institute, found that many foster parents felt they did not have the necessary and honest information from their caseworkers, information they needed to have when caring for children in their home, information they found necessary when having a child from foster care placed in their home. Foster parents also indicated on the survey that they felt the lack of consistency with the same caseworker was a problem for them. Indeed, foster parent after foster parent after foster parent during the survey stated they felt the lack of consistency with the same caseworker was one of the reasons why they were not getting the support they felt they needed. In addition, many foster parents during this study indicated they did not feel appreciated. They did not feel respected by their caseworkers. And as you can imagine, this lack of respect in their mind, this lack of appreciation in their mind, in their hearts, was one reason why they no longer were foster parents. Quite simply, they felt they were not getting the appreciation or the respect that they felt they deserved. Finally, the lack of respite care, or the lack of time off, if you will, with a respite care program for foster parents. This was also seen as a concern, as indicated in the study by the Foster Care Institute. You can read all the results of this study. You can read the thorough study, what foster parents had to say in great detail, in a series of articles that you can find at the Foster Care Institute. But let's look at some of the statements. Let's look at a brief amount of statements. Now, the statements we're going to look at here, the statements we're going to look at in the next few slides are a composite of what foster parents had to say. This is representing what so many said. So when we look at the first one here, this was simply a representation of what so many foster parents indicated during this study. For example, one participant said they needed more training in grief. This is so hard. Another foster parent stated, "The hardest part of being a foster parent for me is when my kiddos leave my house." Another participant went on to say that, "I wish my caseworker would understand that my heart literally breaks in half when the kiddos leave my home." One participant stated they needed more training in grief and loss. Another said, "We learned the hard way how to take care of ourselves." One foster parent went on to say, "More information on grief and loss after a child has left the foster parent's home." One foster parent went on to say that, "The problems I'm having are that my child's caseworkers rarely answers my emails or voicemails. They expect me to be able to drop everything at a moment's notice for them. And when the last child was moved from my home to be with family, I was given 24 hours to get his things packed." One participant indicated that, "I also feel that it takes too long to receive feedback from the people in charge." One foster parent felt, "Taking the time our family needs to grieve when our kiddos go home. Sometimes it feels hard to step back into the chaos after a break." Another foster parent went on to say, "More support and help in a timely manner when we needed to have a child removed and placed elsewhere." And finally, let's look at three more statements, again, that represent what so many foster parents stated during this survey. Caseworkers following up in things and answering their phone. The workers didn't offer any help, and the only reason the kids left is because we were burned out, and requested removal because we couldn't handle five mentally challenged kids, plus raise our toddler and still be functional. It was horrible. Finally, one participant stated, "More support from caseworkers." Now, as we look at these statements, as we look at what foster parents indicated they felt as a reason why they were quitting being foster parents, or some of the struggles they had, perhaps one of these represents you. Perhaps some of these represent how you feel it, or you have felt perhaps in the past at one time. Time after time, foster parents tell the Foster Care Institute that they feel like the bad guy. Everyone seems to be mad at them. The birth family, the caseworker, perhaps the judge, the child from foster care placed in their home. Sometimes even their own friends and family members seem to be mad at them. Why? Because, as you know, the life of a foster parent is a challenging lifestyle. It is a different lifestyle, and it is a lifestyle that includes sacrifices. But do you know who else feels like the bad guy sometimes? So does your caseworker. Yes, caseworkers sometimes feel that they are the bad guy as well. Caseworkers feel that the foster parent may be mad at them, the biological parent, perhaps the CASA or guardian ad litem, the judge, the court, the child, maybe even their own family, because the caseworkers are quite simply overworked. Caseworkers are spending many, many hours every day. It is not a 9 to 5 job. Many caseworkers work late into the night. Many caseworkers work on weekends. Many caseworkers get a phone call in the middle of the night, early, early in the morning. That clock runs past 12 o'clock a.m., and they're out the door going to a child in need. There are times when caseworkers have to spend the night in a social worker's office because there's no placement for the child. Caseworkers are overworked. As you know, foster care is in crisis in many states across the United Nations and across the nation in general. More children are being placed into a foster care system that is struggling with it, and there are not enough foster homes. Caseworkers are overwhelmed. Not only do they have to find a placement for this burgeoning number of children and lack of foster homes, there is all of the paperwork. There is training. There is court hearings. There is visitations. There is working with the biological parents. There's working with the foster parents. There's working with the child. There's therapists. There's so much for foster parent or caseworkers to do, and of course all the paperwork. And they quickly feel overwhelmed. Along with that, caseworkers are under-resourced. There are not enough resources available for today's caseworkers. And when you look at all of that, when you look at all that they put in, and all the time they spend away from home and their family, today's caseworkers are also underpaid. Yes, foster parents are tired. Foster parents grieve when a child is removed from a home. Foster parents feel burned out. Perhaps you have been there at some point. Perhaps you are there now. But caseworkers also are tired. Caseworkers are also have feelings of burnout. Caseworkers also do feel grief and feelings of loss when a child is removed from a home that they feel is not in the best interest. There are many times when a caseworker does not have the power or control. It is a decision made by the court system, a decision that sometimes the caseworkers do not agree with. So how do we help? How do we bring together caseworkers and foster parents for one reason? To partner together for a common goal. And what might that goal be? There's really one goal in mind. Caseworkers and foster parents should partner together for children and families in need. They are both an essential part of helping families reunify, if that's the case, or to move onward and to find healing and find a permanent family, if you will. Foster parents and caseworkers should work together as a team to support attachment, the attachment children have with their birth families. When a child is placed into your home, a foster home, the attachment they have with their biological family members, their birth parents, and their other relatives is essential that remain intact. If it is healthy, if it is safe. Foster parents and caseworkers need to work together to make sure that attachment continues, to help maintain the relationships between the child and their biological family members. Many times a child is removed from a home and sometimes removed from their siblings, separated from their siblings. It is important that caseworkers and foster parents work together to make sure that child also continues the relationship with their siblings. Finally, foster parents and caseworkers should work together as a team, as a unit, to ease the child's concerns, to ease their anxieties, to answer their questions during a time of transition. For we have seen throughout many of these online training webinars at the Foster Care Institute, as well as in the book, The Foster Care Survival Guide, that when a child is removed from a home, their home, and placed into a foster home, it is a time of great concern. It is a time of anxiety. It is a time of fear, of confusion, of questions. Quite simply, many children are scared when they're placed into your home, a foster home. And caseworkers and foster parents should work together to make this difficult transition, this very scary time, if you will, a little bit easier, a little bit more comfortable, if you will, a time of less anxiety. In any relationship, perhaps the most single important factor is one of trust. If you're in a relationship with a spouse or a partner, if you're in a relationship with members of your own biological family, maybe a relationship with people you go to church with or a faith-based organization, at work, whatever, in the neighborhood, whatever it might be, it is important that if that relationship is going to be a healthy, positive, strong one, that it is based on trust. you know that trust takes time to establish. Trust does not happen overnight. It takes time for the person to trust you and for you to be able to trust that person. Trust takes effort to establish as well. You have to work sometimes to create that feeling of trust. You have to work so the person can trust you. They can see that you are somebody that is trustworthy. As we have seen, caseworkers are overworked. Caseworkers are overwhelmed. They are under resourced and they are underpaid. Caseworkers have feelings just like you do. They need you to have a positive mindset. They need you to work with them in a positive attitude. When you're frustrated with the system, let them know it, but let them know in a positive mindset. Do not come to your caseworker with every gripe, every complaint, with frustrations. You may have some questions and some anxieties and some confusion and some disappointment, and that's okay, and that is normal. But remember, your caseworker is a fellow human being who has a job that has to be done. So your positive mindset, your positive attitude, and guess what? The power of your smile goes a long ways in establishing that trust, in helping to build a strong working relationship. To be sure, your caseworker and you may have a different set of values. And that's okay, and that's normal. After all, you're two different people coming from two different backgrounds and two different experiences. Differences of opinion are okay and should be celebrated. So remember that. You may have different set of values and opinions in the caseworker. You still need to work together in a positive, friendly fashion. When a child is placed in your home, you as foster parent have a certain set of expectations that are placed upon you. What you need to do for the child placed in your home, what your role is as a foster parent. In the same fashion, the caseworker also has a role as well. They have a set of expectations that they have to do. There are a number of things that they need to do as a child's caseworker and as caseworker working with you. It is important that both you and the caseworker know exactly what your role is. And those roles need to be clear. It is important that you both know your rules so that work is not repeated or neglected. For example, whose responsibility is it to take the child to the doctors? Who is expected to take the child to court or visitation? Whose role is it to indicate to the CASA worker time for the child? Whose roles and responsibilities are those? You need to make sure that those are clear with both of you. And if you do not know, ask your caseworker. When a child's placed in your home, ask the caseworker what the caseworker expects of you, what their expectations are, and what your responsibilities to the child and your responsibilities to the caseworker is. At the same time, you might ask the caseworker what their role or their responsibility is towards the child and towards you. This will help to make sure that everything is completed and nothing is neglected. Now, it was indicated several times throughout this study that foster parents felt they did not hear enough from their caseworkers, or they felt they were not able to get in contact with their caseworker. And foster parent after foster parent after foster parent stated over and over again they needed to hear from their caseworker. In the same regard, the caseworker wants to hear from you. How is a child doing after a visitation? How is the child feeling after a doctor's appointment? How is the child doing in school? How's the child doing growing into your family? Are they accepting rules? Is a child struggling with this? Is a child struggling with that? We have a whole online training webinar about the importance of documentation. And I would encourage you to watch that webinar so you can find out what you need to document and let your caseworker know. Your caseworker wants to hear from you. To be sure, communication is a two-way street. It is the exchange of ideas, thoughts, and information. So therefore, when your caseworker comes to you with some new thoughts, some new ideas, with some information, you need to be an active listener. Listen to what the caseworker has to say. Listen to their opinion. As we indicated a few slides back, it is important that the caseworker hear from you. The more that you share with your caseworker about how the child is doing, about the visitations, about school, about the child in your home, about yourself and your spouse, how you are doing with this placement, perhaps about how your own biological children are doing as well, the struggles the child may be having, the struggles you may be having, the questions and frustrations that the child and you might be experiencing. The more you share those with the caseworker, again in a positive fashion, not in a gripe session, but in a positive fashion, the more trust is built, the stronger your relationship will become with your caseworker. So let your caseworker know when you have some questions. Let the caseworker know when you have some concerns, perhaps concerns about a visitation that you feel did not go so well. Perhaps concerns the child is not getting the therapeutical or counseling sessions that the child needs. Concerns a child may be struggling in school, or how the child is relating to your own members of your own family. Share those concerns. And again, listen to what the caseworker may have to say. One more time. The more you share with your caseworker, the more that trust is solidified and the healthier your relationship becomes. In the same token, ask your caseworker to share all information with you. If you are unable to go to a court hearing, ask the caseworker how it went. If there was a visitation and you had questions about it, ask the caseworker how it went. If you have questions about how the birth parents are doing on their case plan, ask your caseworker. And once again, remember the importance of documentation. Documentation, documentation, documentation are perhaps the three ways a foster parent can keep their house safe, and the child safe, and the foster parents safe. Questions may arise about the child in your home, about your parenting skills. Documentation is essential. And again, I would encourage you to go back and look at that webinar on documentation or read the chapter in the book, The Foster Parenting Manual. Since communication is a two-way street, it is essential. It is so important that both you and the caseworker have all current contact information. You should have the email address for your caseworker, their home email address and their work email address. You should have the phone numbers for the caseworker at home and at work. Because there may be those times an emergency may arise that you need to let the caseworker know immediately. For example, perhaps a child threatened suicide, or perhaps a child was injured or hurt in an awful fashion. You might need to let that caseworker know immediately. There are other examples as well. In the same fashion, the caseworker should have your email, your work email, your home email. The caseworker should have your work phone number and your home phone number. If this is not the case, you need to rectify, you need to change that, you need to make that happen immediately. Ask your caseworker for their phone numbers and emails and make sure your caseworker has yours. Learning is an ongoing process. And as foster parents, we are going to learn something new in each placement. We're going to learn something new each day because every child is going to bring with them a unique set of challenges, a unique set of anxieties, a unique set of differences. And each placement is going to be a different relationship with your own family. So, in that regard, learning never stops. Ask your caseworker for access to training webinars such as these. Perhaps your caseworker and your agency has a book library, and if so, ask to borrow some of those books. Perhaps the caseworker could point you in the way towards some educational foster care related podcasts or videos. Ask your caseworker to do that. And ask your caseworker if they have any information, any informational packets that you might be able to learn from. When a child is placed in your home, there will be cultural differences in some regard, perhaps in race or gender, perhaps in their background, their history, their political views, perhaps their religious affiliations, perhaps in their appearances, their norms or sexual orientations. When this should happen, and you're struggling with some of these, you're struggling how to address some of these, or you're confused by some of these, again, ask your caseworker for some help in this regard. Some of the most popular requested seminars that I conduct as the director of the Foster Care Institute across the nation include the following: grief and loss for foster parents, the dangers of social media and online technology, how to work with birth parents, how to care for your own biological children, marriage and foster parenting, and challenges in school. If you need some additional information on these, ask your caseworker to provide you training opportunities, whether it's in a training conference or a training session or through an online venue. But your caseworker should have access to these training sessions and these training webinars, and they should be able to provide them to you. Ask them if there's an area that you want to learn more about. Now, if my car should break down, I am going to go to a mechanic and ask to have it fixed. If my air conditioning goes out, I'm picking up the phone and I'm calling my local heating and air man or woman. I'm going to ask for help when I need help because I can't do it all by myself. I am not the expert in everything, and neither are you, and that is normal. You need to recognize that there may be those times where you need some therapy and counseling sessions, some professional insight and help, if you will, for the child in your home, perhaps for your own family. Perhaps you are going through a period where you are experience feelings of grief and loss because a child left your home, a child that meant a great deal to you, a child that's broken your heart. Or you're struggling with caring for your own children during this time, or you need help with your own marriage, perhaps, because marriages, as we've seen in other online webinars and in the book, The Foster Care Survival Guide, marriages can feel a great deal of strain when caring for children in foster care. It is okay for you to ask your caseworker to help you find therapy and counseling sessions, to help provide individual and family counseling sessions for you and your family. Your caseworker is there to help you in that regard. As we've seen, many foster parents felt they did not have enough respite care or time off, if you will. Some foster parents do not understand what respite care is, and others are not aware of it. Some may feel guilty using it. Whatever this may be, I encourage you to ask for respite care when you feel you need it. And if you are unsure what respite care is, ask your caseworker or consult the book, The Foster Parenting Manual. Both of these will have the answers you're looking for. Respite care is a valuable tool and a valuable resource for foster parents, and your caseworker can help you find this. Again, caseworkers need to know what's going on. Share updates with them on how visitation or court went. Share updates with them on how the birth parents are doing in regard to their child. If the birth parents are calling you or contact with you, or if you have a relationship with them, share that information with your caseworker. As we have seen in several online training webinars here at the Foster Care Survival Institute, as well as the book, The Foster Care Survival Guide, and Helping Foster Children in School, children in foster care will struggle in school. They will generally be behind a year and a half academically and will struggle with behavior and academics and in the areas of reading and math. Child needs their foster parents and the caseworkers, as well as their teachers, to work as a team to be their advocate. So it's important for you as a foster parent to stay in regular contact with your teachers and include your caseworker in that conversation. It is important for you as a foster parent to provide educational and emotional background information to your teachers, your child's teachers, and again, include your caseworker in that contact. Deliver information to school counselors and administrators about discipline or learning disabilities, and if so, ask your caseworker to help you do the same. The more information the teacher has about the child in their classroom, the better equipped they will be to care and help for that child. The child in foster care needs you to be their advocate. They also need the caseworker to be their advocate. The two of you should work together to advocate for that child. And as we noted, caseworkers have feelings as well. Send them a thank you card every once in a while. Send them a thinking of you card. Give them a phone call. Let them know that you're thinking of them. And tell them thank you. Tell them thank you often. Because they're doing a hard job that has so little reward. Again, overworked, overwhelmed, under-resourced, underpaid, working long hours. And they need someone to say, thank you. Be that person, and be that person today. For much more, you can find out, you can go to the Dr. John DeGarmo Foster Care, Weebly.com, my website, the Foster Care Institute, to find other training webinars. Of course, you can find information on my Facebook page, and there's my email address if you have questions about this online training webinar or others. A great resource for children in foster care is A Different Home, A New Foster Child Story. It is a wonderful book to read to a child initially placed into foster care to help answer their questions, to help ease their anxieties. Remember, when they're placed in your home, they're scared, they're confused, they're frightened. They don't know what's going on. They don't know when they'll see their mommy or daddy next. They don't know why they're in your home, and they don't know when they'll be able to go back home. They have so many questions. This book helps you to answer their questions. And there are other books as well, all available in good bookstores and at the Foster Care Institute. Thank you so much for taking part in this online training webinar. Thank you for being a foster parent and caring for children in need. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo.